A fallacy is a mistaken belief, usually based on unsound arguments. At least according to Google, that's what it is. You may have heard of things like the gambler's fallacy, but I did not realize that there were so many of them. So today, we're going to do a little bit of introspection. We're going to learn about every single type of a logical fallacy and maybe see if we fall into those sometimes. Thankfully, the Paint Explainer has allowed us to react to this video, which I'm very excited about, so let's go ahead and take a look.
Ad hominem fallacy.
Here we go.
The ad hominem fallacy happens when someone attempts to discredit someone's argument with personal attacks rather than the substance of the argument itself. Hasty
that one's an annoying one. It does speak to people's characters in a way. Maybe you can make an attack that is somewhat tangentially related. Say, oh, this person cheated on his wife, so you shouldn't trust him maybe as a friend. That doesn't mean he's not going to lower the taxes, right?
Hasty generalization, also known as the overgeneralization fallacy, happens when making a claim based on evidence that is just too small. Red herring fallacy.
Hey, that's just like anecdotal evidence. Like, cars are not dangerous. I have never been hit by one. Therefore, they are not dangerous.
A red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. It might be used to change the subject. Tu quoque fallacy.
Ooh, that happens a lot. Politicians do that stuff all the time. They'll completely take a question, ignore it, and then move on to, but we're doing this really good thing that's awesome and fantastic. Completely dodging the question. That's really annoying.
Quoque is a technique that intends to discredit the opponent's argument by attacking the opponent's own personal behavior and actions as being inconsistent with their argument, therefore accusing hypocrisy instead of countering the actual argument.
It's like do as I say, not as I do, right? Oh, but you don't exercise. Okay, yeah, but exercising is still good. Regardless of whether the person telling you to exercise does it or not, it's still a good thing. It's still good advice, generally.
Slippery slope fallacy. In a slippery slope argument, a course of action is rejected because, with little or no evidence, one insists that it will lead to a chain reaction resulting in an undesirable end or ends.
Hey, sometimes it can, you never know.
Pleading fallacy. Special pleading happens when applying standards, principles, or rules to other people or circumstances, while making oneself or certain circumstances exempt from the same critical criteria without providing adequate justification. Loaded question.
People want to think that their perspective is much more intricate and in-depth than everyone else's. Because when you see something from your own perspective, you get all the different reasonings in your own brain as to why something is the way it is. Like, yeah, my dog bit that kid, but he's usually such a good boy. He's not a bad dog. He's biting another kid again. Well, he's so good though, usually.
A loaded question is a question that already contains an assumption. False dilemma fallacy.
Have you just stopped cheating on Tess? It's like saying, when did you stop cheating on your wife?
The false dilemma fallacy, also called the black and white fallacy, occurs when someone misrepresents an issue by offering only two options when more exist, or by presenting the options as mutually exclusive when they are not. Strawman fallacy.
Oh my god, people use this term on the internet constantly. Everything's a straw man.
Fallacy happens when one rebuts an argument by misconstruing it. Circular reasoning.
Oh my god, I hate this. It's ridiculous. You say you like waffles? Oh, what? So you hate pancakes? Is that what you're saying? You say you hate pancakes then, right?
The circular reasoning fallacy is an argument that assumes the very thing it is trying to prove is true. Instead of offering evidence, it simply repeats the conclusion, rendering the argument logically incoherent.
This is one that the kids destroy. It's time for you to go to bed. Why? Because it's bedtime. Why? Because you have to go to bed. But why? Because he needs to sleep. But why? Because he needs to be rested. Okay, but why? Children destroying every single logical sound argument.
Appeal
but
to
why?
Authority fallacy. It is a form of argument in which the mere fact that an influential figure holds a certain position is used as evidence that the position itself is correct.
Some people take this way too far, and they start to distrust anything any person of authority says. Like, oh, the government told you that the sky's blue? Well, it's fucking green, brother. You know it is. I don't trust them governments. They took my wife and kids.
Appeal to nature fallacy. It's an argument in which it is proposed that a thing is good because it is natural or bad because it is unnatural. It's a
like cyanide.
Fallacy because the unstated primary premise, what is natural is good, is typically irrelevant and an opinion instead of a fact.
And what is good at the end of the day? Something truly natural things do not have moralities. The bear eats the human because they think the human tasty and they need food. Does that mean the bear good? Does that mean the human deserve to be eaten and the human being eaten is good? No, that's not good.
Composition fallacy. It arises when one infers that something is true of the whole from the fact that it is true of some part of the whole. Division.
I have never seen that one before, actually.
Fallacy. The division fallacy occurs when one reasons that something that is true for a whole must also be true for all or some of its parts.
Again, I've never seen that one. I wonder where that's usually applied.
Affirming the consequent. Affirming the consequent is the fallacy of taking a true conditional statement, such as, if the lamp were broken, then the room would be dark, under certain assumptions like it is nighttime and the windows are closed, and invalidly inferring its converse, the room is dark so the lamp must be broken. Anecdotal fallacy.
That's so funny. I'm sure there are some ways where that doesn't sound ridiculously dumb. The room's dark. The lights must be broken. It's so silly.
Anecdotal fallacy occurs when people use their limited personal experience to draw sweeping conclusions about a given topic. Appeal to
Yeah, it's similar to one we had before, where if it's not based off of your own personal experience, then it must not be real.
emotion fallacy. It's a technique characterized by the manipulation of the other person's emotions in order to win an argument, especially in the absence of factual evidence. Burden
Hey, no, they're right. They had a bad day. They deserve the kick. That's true. They definitely deserve it.
fallacy. The burden of proof lies with the one who makes a claim, not the one who denies it. The burden of proof fallacy happens when a person tries to remove their need to provide proof for many reasons. No true scholar.
That's annoying. Also, hey, the justice system, right? The burden to prove someone is guilty is placed on the accuser, right? You don't have to prove that you are innocent for the most
Scotsman
part.
fallacy. It's an attempt to defend a generalization of a certain group by excluding any counterexamples for not being pure enough.
Wait, what's it say? No Scotsman puts sugar in his porridge, but my Uncle Mike likes sugar with his porridge.
Defend a generalization of a certain group by excluding
Well, he ain't a true Scotsman, is he, Ken?
any counterexamples for not being pure enough. Texas sharpshooter fallacy. The Texas
Oh, wait, I just realized the no true Scotsman thing is completely related to fan bases. It's every single fan base on the planet. They're always like that. Oh, you started playing Pokemon with Scarlet and Violet. I guess you're not a real fan. You must not be a real fan.
sharpshooter fallacy takes its name from the metaphor of a gunman shooting and then drawing targets around the bullet hole clusters to make it look like he hit the target. It illustrates how people first figure out what their conclusion is and then go looking for data that supports it, ignoring differences and randomness.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. If you already have a certain point of view, then you want to find things that support your already existing point of view. You're not looking for things that will challenge your point of view, because challenging your point of view will challenge your psyche and your personality. And if I'm wrong on this, then what else am I wrong on? And I can't be wrong because then that's not good. Being wrong is bad. And I can't be bad, can I?
Pressed correlative. The attempt to redefine one of two mutually exclusive options so that one alternative encompasses the other, thus making one alternative impossible. Something like, I need to know if we should stop for lunch or not. You are either hungry or not hungry, which is it? If being hungry means being able to eat, I am always hungry. Personal incredulity fallacy.
Whoa. Okay, that took a little bit for my brain to understand. I would love to see like genuine examples that don't sound really silly of this, so I could see how people would use them in regular conversation. That'd be cool.
When the arguer presumes that whatever is true must be easy to understand or to imagine. Ambiguity fallacy. It happens when an unclear phrase with multiple definitions is used within the argument. Therefore, it does not support the conclusion.
See, that's just this English language being awful. There's too many words that mean the same thing. Languages they're too hard. We need a standardized language so that every word means a different thing. Maybe we don't. Maybe that's not a good idea.
Genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is the act of rejecting or accepting an argument solely on the basis of its origin rather than
Whoa! That is a crazy leap.
its content. Middle ground fallacy. It's the fallacy that the truth is always in the middle of two opposites. Affirming a
Got some centrist fence sitters over here that are like, oh guys, we need to meet in the middle. Like, do we need to meet in the middle? If the middle is angels and devils, is the middle the right one? Really? Do we need a little bit of the devil? Maybe a little bit of fun. A little bit of devil is a little bit of fun. Maybe we do need a little bit of the devil sometimes.
The affirming a disjunct fallacy occurs when, given an either-or scenario, you wrongly assume that if one statement or outcome is true, the other one cannot be true. Appeal to tradition. It happens when we ignore the evidence that we should change because we have been doing something for a long time. Sunk.
That's annoying too. Why can't you try something new? Just because something new don't mean it's bad.
Cost fallacy. The sunk
Oh, this is the biggest one, I feel like. The sunk cost fallacy, I think we all know what this one is.
cost fallacy is our tendency to continue with something we've invested money, effort, or time into, even if the current costs outweigh the benefits.
Because it feels so hard to try and pull yourself away. Say you're gambling, you've gambled $50 and you're like, oh, I kind of want that $50 back. I really want it. If I put in 10 more, then maybe I can get that $50. Because if you get up and walk away, then you've lost $50. But while you're at the table, there is the possibility that you can still get that money back and potentially more. So you could still win. You could still not lose. Because if you get up, then you are a loser. You are consigning yourself to loss. And that is hard to do. And it's the same thing with relationships. If you've been with someone for 15 years and they're a bad partner and they're not very good, you're like, oh, well, I don't know if I can leave them because I've been with them for so long. I've invested so much time and effort and emotion and energy into this relationship. To walk away now would be to have all of that be for nothing. But it's already for nothing if it's a bad relationship. You're just extending the amount of time and energy and emotion that you're putting into it. You're just throwing it into a dump. That you don't need to. You could stop, but it's very hard to. It's very difficult to stop and walk away from those kind of things.
Appeal to ignorance. It happens when someone asserts that a proposition is true because it has not yet been proven false, or that a proposition is false because it has not yet been proven true.
Yes. I will be the most subscribed YouTuber. I will be at some point. You can't say that that's not true because we don't know the future. Anyway, you should subscribe to the Paint Explainer because these videos are really good.
Continuum fallacy. It's the argument that two states or conditions cannot be considered distinct, or do not exist at all, because between them there exists a continuum of states. Equivocation. The equivocation fallacy refers to the use of an ambiguous word or phrase in more than one sense within the same
Baseball players use mammals. What?
argument. Faulty analogy. A faulty analogy is saying that two things are alike in other ways just because they are alike in one way. Denying the antecedent.
Well, they are still fruits, so that's kind of like two ways, and they're all sweets. So that's three ways. So apples and strawberries, they got a lot going on.
Denying the antecedent infers the inverse from an original statement. It's something like, if you are a ski instructor, then you have a job. You are not a ski instructor, therefore you have no job. False cause. A false cause.
I love some of these examples are so funny.
Fallacy.
If you are not a ski instructor, you are done, son. You better be a ski instructor. I hope everyone watching this is a ski instructor right now.
Occurs when someone incorrectly assumes that something causes something else without enough proof, usually using just a correlation as proof.
The more videos I create, the more humans are born. Therefore, every time I make a video, humans are born because of my video. Exactly. That's true.
Definist fallacy. It happens when one defines a term in such a way that makes one's position much easier to defend. Ecological fallacy.
But they just redefine, yes, exactly. They just redefine the way that you say something. When someone says, we have to crack down on this group, but they say it in a way where it's like, we have to make sure that these criminals are not in this area anymore. And they're not talking about criminals specifically. They talk about the whole group of a certain type of minority or something along those lines.
Ecological fallacies assume what is true for a population is true for the individual members of that population. Etymological fallacy. Etymological fallacy is the faulty argument that the true meaning of a word is its oldest or original meaning. Quoting out of...
That is a silly one because the whole point of language is that it changes over time in order to reflect how we interact. The original meaning of a word probably isn't even the original meaning of a word. It's probably a slightly different sounding version of another word that meant that kind of similar thing. So language is changing all the time. In fact, the whole point of language is that it doesn't really make sense. There's no set rules for them usually because it's just made up. It's not made up in a lab. You don't sit down and make a new language. It's made up over hundreds of years of hundreds of thousands of people constantly interacting and developing and speaking to each other. So usually a lot of it doesn't have rules that make sense a lot of the time. Like, why do we have there, and there in English? Why do we say there is a house rather than there, comma, house it is?
of context. It's a fallacy in which a passage from a quote is removed from its surrounding matter in such a way as to distort its intended meaning. Context.
Oh my God, this is video game reviews when they get plastered on trailers. The publisher will take the word incredible from a certain publication, except the actual quote is an incredible waste of time.
Text may be omitted intentionally or accidentally. False equivalence. It's a fallacy in which an equivalence is drawn between two subjects based on flawed or false reasoning.
Fred got shot. He got hurt. Technically true.
Historian's fallacy. The historian's fallacy occurs when one assumes that decision-makers in the past viewed events from the same perspective and had the same information as those subsequently analyzing the decision.
Who really thinks that, though? Is it just too hard for some people to understand that what they know, the knowledge they have and their point of view, isn't what other people have? I feel like that's probably not too hard, right?
Inflation of conflict. It's the error of exaggerating the amount of disagreement in a field in order to invalidate claims in that field. Incomplete comparison.
Oh my god, this is like when 99% of people agree on a specific thing, but then there's one guy in the corner that's like, no, I don't agree. And the bystander watching this happen says, oh, I guess we just don't know then. I guess that's completely, no one knows. No one has any idea. Yeah, no, we do. We do have an idea. Everyone agrees apart from the one guy, and nobody even likes the one guy. The one guy comes around and he just says this thing all the time. It's what's it called? The lizard man constant, where at least 1 or 2% of the population will always say that the government is made of lizards, even though it's completely ridiculous and makes no sense, just because they either want to ruin the study or they're completely fucking batshit insane.
It's a misleading argument popular in advertising. Since the assertion is incomplete, it cannot be refuted. Ludic fallacy. It's a term used to describe how people mistake the kind of uncertainty found in games for the kind of uncertainty found in real life. For example, organized competitive fighting trains the athlete to focus on the game and, in order not to dissipate his concentration, to ignore the possibility of what is not specifically allowed by the rules.
I'm pretty sure there's no martial art that will save you from guy with knives, right? You got a guy with knives, you gotta run away. That's the best thing you do. You have to run away. I think they teach you that. Any kind of martial art that you take, it's like, this will not let you beat anyone up. This will not let you win any fight. Because if a guy have knife, then you could just get stabbed, and that's it. Like, you're not gonna martial art, you're not gonna karate chop your way from a knife in your gullet, right?
Moralistic fallacy. Making statements about what is on the basis of claims about what ought to be in violation of fact-value distinction. Nirvana fallacy. Comparing a realistic solution with an idealized one and discounting or even dismissing the realistic solution as a—
oh my god, this is so dumb. This is like so common when I don't want to make a big thing about that right now, but when the issue of guns come up and saying that if we make guns illegal in America, people will get them anyway. When the idea is you are reducing the amount altogether so that there is a much lower chance and that you cannot acquire it legally, which means it'll be a lot harder for people to get it. And the alternate solution is, what, we just don't do anything then. Okay, we just don't do anything, right? And then people say things like, oh, but, you know, good guy with gun and whatever. But I don't want to get into that. But there's a lot of this going on, which basically paralyzes any kind of forward progression or momentum, which is just, oh, no, we can't do anything because there will be a small amount that will get around it anyway. So it doesn't matter. We may as well do nothing instead.
Result of comparing it to a perfect world or impossible standard. Proof by assertion. It's a fallacy in which a proposition is repeatedly restated, regardless of contradiction and refutation. The proposition can sometimes be repeated until any challenges or opposition cease, letting the proponent assert it as fact solely due to a lack of challengers.
You don't have any counter-arguments.
Cherry picking. It's the act of—
why won't you debate me on the color of the sky, bro?
Pointing to individual cases or data that seem to confirm a particular position while ignoring a significant portion of related and similar cases or data that may contradict that position.
I feel like I am guilty of this sometimes, because you see a story online, you're like, see, this bad thing happened. I knew it happened, when that story online is pretty small, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not really a big issue.
Psychologist's fallacy. It's a fallacy that occurs when an observer assumes that his or her subjective experience reflects the true nature of an event.
I think I'm also guilty of this one too. Not so much physical things, because I listen, I'm not Mr. Mountain over here. I'm not big boy Dan. But in terms of like maybe being able to get up early or being able to stay on a schedule, being able to arrive to things on time. Objectively, these things to me are pretty easy, to arrive to things on time and to be on a routine. But for other people, it's just not as easy because they have other factors in their lives that might prevent them from doing that. Or maybe their brain just works in a different way and it doesn't allow them to fall into routines like that.
Justification fallacy. It happens when an abstract concept is treated as if it were a concrete, real event. Something like saying that evolution selects which traits are passed on to future generations, while evolution is not a conscious entity with will. Retrospective determinism. It's the thought that because something happened under some circumstances, it was therefore bound to happen due to those circumstances. Thought terminating cliché. It's a form of loaded language, often passing as folk wisdom, with the function of stopping an argument from proceeding further, ending the—
Isn't this an appeal to tradition too? We should use new tools, but you reject using new tools because you don't— well, I guess not really. It's not really appeal to tradition. It's just an appeal to, oh, well, this works now, so why change, right? Which I'm also guilty of this. If something is working and it's okay, it doesn't seem to be having any problems, I'm like, yep, don't have to change nothing about this. This is great. This is going fantastic.
Debate with a cliché rather than a point. Fallacy of the single cause. It occurs when it is assumed that there is a single, simple cause of an outcome, when, in reality, it may have been caused by a number of small causes. Appeal to the stone.
Like a car crash. Someone may not paying attention when they're driving, but also someone trying to swerve to avoid a bird at the same time. Maybe the road is a little slick and wet or icy. Maybe the car's wheels are not as tracked as they should be. So there's yeah, I can see that.
It happens when a dismissal is made by stating or reiterating that the argument is absurd without providing further argumentation. Ignoratio elenchi. Ignoratio elenchi, also called missing the point, is the fallacy of presenting an argument that may or may not be logically valid and sound, but whose conclusion fails to address the issue in question. Circumstantial ad hominem. Stating that the arguer's personal interest in advancing a conclusion means that their conclusion is wrong. Tone policing, an ad hominem fallacy that focuses on the emotion behind a message rather than the message itself as a discrediting tactic.
Yeah, this just gets people more mad, which gets people more tone policey. And it's a massive loop that ends in nothing actually being done to help the people that really need it.
Association fallacy. It's the fallacy that asserts that properties of one thing must also be properties of another thing. If
US citizens won 400 Nobel Prizes. How many is that of like a percentage? Wait, is Nobel Prize is like an American thing? Like mostly Americans just win that? Also, America has a very big population.
both things belong to the same group. Appeal to accomplishment. It's kind of an appeal to authority fallacy. It happens when an assertion is deemed true or false based on the accomplishments of the proposer. Courtiers were
Ah, man, I'm definitely guilty of this. I feel like someone knows something more about a certain subject than me, I'm just going to defer to them completely. Like, okay, even if I feel like what you're saying is wrong in this moment, you're the smart one, so I should probably believe you.
reply. When a criticism is dismissed by claiming that the critic lacks sufficient knowledge, credentials, or training to credibly comment on the subject matter. Appeal
not
to
a doctor.
consequences. It's an argument that concludes a hypothesis to be either true or false, based on whether the premise leads to desirable or undesirable consequences.
The stock market will go up because people will lose money if it didn't. Okay. Earthquake will not happen because people will be hurt if they did.
Appeal to novelty. It happens when a proposal is claimed to be superior or better solely because it is new or modern. Bulverism. It is the
I definitely fall for that. I like new things.
assumption and assertion that an argument is flawed or false because of the arguer's identity. Chronological snobbery. Chronological snobbery considers modern ideas superior to those from earlier ages just because they are modern. It's a form of appeal to novelty. I'm entitled to my opinion fallacy. When a person
Oh no, here we go. Yeah, sometimes you're not. And sometimes you don't get an opinion on things. There are certain things that you do not get an opinion on things. Yeah, that was a good sentence, Daniel. Well done.
discredits any opposition by claiming that they are entitled to their opinion instead of logically analyzing said opposition.
I had a conversation with someone once that they thought that being gay was a choice. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. You're just wrong. And they say, no, I'm entitled to my opinion. Like, no, you don't. No, it's not an opinion. You don't get to have it. It's not an opinion. You don't get an opinion on if the sun is going to rise in the morning. You don't get an opinion on if water keeps people alive. You don't get an opinion on whether my cat is cute or not. This is all logical. This is facts. You can't have an opinion on things that are just true.
Two wrongs make a right. It's an argument in which an allegation of wrongdoing is countered with a similar allegation. Vacuous truth. A claim that is technically true but meaningless, such as claiming that no mobile phones in the room are on when there are no mobile phones in the room. Fallacy. It's saying that when an argument contains a fallacy, its conclusion must be false. If you like this format, check out this.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I mean, an argument that does contain a fallacy could technically still be true, but it makes it a lot easier to disregard it anyway. Anyway, I love this kind of stuff. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really fun. I think these videos are fantastic, and you should definitely subscribe to The Pain Explainer. And if you want to see more of my dumb face too, you can always subscribe to this channel as well.